obviously the best setups, our favorite plays are going to work immediately, right? We want to see that bounce versus VWAP or whatever level we're trading it versus immediately, because it tells us that, the entry was not only correct, but other market participants are finding value at this location, and prices should in this case go higher. Now when I see something like this, right, it tells me that, all right, the selling activity here from this sell is there's still some sellers present. In this scenario, the only thing to do, assuming you have the patience for it, is just to wait, right? Leave the stop in place there and just let it continue to develop. I mean, this tells us that there's definitely a fight. There's definitely a fight for price here. And, depending on your conviction levels, is going to determine whether or not you're able to hold. This trade with NQ futures, I'm just going to stay in it. I'm going to stay in it. I'm going for either here or right up through here. Now, the nice thing is, this consolidation was fairly tame and pretty contained, and actually developed quite nicely in the sense that you have a bit of a higher low right here and then another bit of a higher low right here. So little tiny clues that, all right, buyers still kind of have the upper hand here. And if there are some sellers that are too aggressively kind of pouring in on this initial pullback, well, probability kind of does favor those guys getting washed out of their trade with, they're going to have their stops up here, or at the very latest, they'll have their stops up here. And so once I start to see, this is a little bit more of an advanced concept, but once I start to see this consolidation like this, and then price actually resolves higher from that consolidation and holds, that adds even more conviction for me. I know with almost certainty, very high probability, that at the very least this high is going to be tested, and then potentially, depending on how it develops, we will get that session high. And that's kind of what you see play out in price here, because we have to think about, what you really want to think about is, what is the counterparty thinking, right? What is the logic? Like, if you're grabbing a long trade, what is the logic for someone to be short? And if you can kind of get into the mind of the counterparty, I think that's a really useful exercise and will help you be a better trader ultimately. So if you're thinking about, well, what is the guy who is shorting from the highs or shorting on this lower high thinking, and then where is that guy's stop? Well, that guy's banking on this rolling over. Okay, it doesn't roll over. We retest this little structure area. He's banking on this rolling over. All right, that doesn't roll over. Well, he may have his stop right here if it's really tight. If not, he'll have it up here. Let's run those. And definitely, if not, it's up at session high. So it's very much so a game of grabbing liquidity, which is why, we'll often see things like the up thrust or the Wyckoff spring, which I talk about frequently. And so I'm always kind of thinking about, what the other guy is thinking, and kind of almost assessing that trade in my mind. Even if I'm long right through here, I'm kind of thinking, all right, well, what is the actual bearish case right here for an intraday trade? And what are some clues that I need to look for? And that kind of helps me stay very objective with what I'm looking at, and not kind of, not be married, not be overly biased to my play.